There are moments in life when the balance shifts so violently that even the quietest truths become thunder. For so long, things felt one-sided. The lies, the manipulation, the games played behind curtains. It all built like static in the air, unseen yet heavy. Then the secret surfaced. Not through rage or vengeance, but through exposure so precise that it cut deeper than confrontation ever could. It wasn't an argument. It was revelation. What made it terrifying wasn't the truth itself, but what stood behind it. The presence that seemed to shield you without needing words. The same people who once whispered now flinched at your silence. They sensed something had changed. The protector was not flesh and bone, but energy, an unseen force that made deceit tremble. The secret's exposure didn't destroy you. It crowned you. Every hidden intention that once threatened your peace now bowed before something unexplainable. When truth finally emerged, it didn't come dressed in drama. It arrived softly, but the air changed with it. People who built illusions felt the ground shift beneath them. The protector wasn't loud. It was presence, conviction, and timing. Life has a strange way of defending those aligned with truth. It waits until deception overplays its hand, then steps in quietly, correcting the balance. Those who thought they had you cornered realized too late that protection doesn't always look divine. It looks strategic. Every move they made was already anticipated. Every lie they crafted became the evidence of their downfall. The terrifying part wasn't that you survived. It was that you seemed untouchable while everything else fell apart. The protector didn't fight for you. It operated through you. Confidence replaced fear, clarity replaced chaos. The secret that was meant to destroy ended up being the weapon that revealed your invincibility. The world reacts differently to truth that carries no vengeance. There's a purity to it, a kind of power that doesn't need defense. When the mask fell, everyone felt it. The protector wasn't something external. It lived in stillness, in restraint, in the refusal to be reactive. That's what unsettled everyone. They expected you to fight, to plead, to justify. Instead, you observed. You let silence tell the story. That calmness was terrifying because it reflected a higher understanding, a kind that cannot be manipulated. The protector was discipline forged through betrayal, awareness molded from disappointment. When you stopped responding emotionally, the universe started moving strategically. That's when protection revealed itself, not as divine coincidence, but as alignment. Those who tried to sabotage you discovered that truth has a way of circling back with interest. The exposure wasn't revenge, it was inevitability, and the protector ensured no one left unaccountable. Exposure has a rhythm. It begins with whispers, then accelerates through tension, and ends in silence so sharp it cuts the air. What once hid in shadows was now center stage. Every false alliance, every strategic deceit, every quiet manipulation, it all surfaced. But what unsettled people most was how calm you remained. It was the calm of someone who knows forces beyond perception are in motion. The protector didn't roar, it rearranged. Those who wronged you started facing patterns they once used against others. That's how life restores balance. It mirrors behavior until lessons are learned. You didn't need to lift a finger. The same web they spun became their own confinement. The protector didn't operate on anger but on law, the kind that punishes arrogance through consequence. The secret's exposure was not your doing, it was simply time correcting what humans refuse to. When certain truths unfold, they don't just shock people, they rearrange reality. Everyone involved feels the shift. Those who spoke lies begin to stumble over their own stories. The audience they once entertained now watches in confusion. And through it all, you stay composed, no longer needing validation. That composure came from understanding that protection isn't about being saved. It's about being seen clearly by life itself. Every attack became instruction. Every betrayal became blueprint. The protector had been sculpting your awareness all along. The people who thought they could break you didn't realize they were preparing you for self-mastery. And when mastery arrived, it carried consequences. Energy doesn't lie. It returns what it receives, amplified. The secret was never about what they hid. It was about what you became while they were busy hiding it. And when that transformation surfaced, it terrified everyone who once underestimated your endurance. The most unnerving thing for those who plotted your downfall was realizing their power never came from strength. It came from your permission. Once that permission was withdrawn, they lost everything. The protector revealed itself in the silence that followed, in the way life began exposing truths without your involvement. People who once believed falsehood started questioning their own loyalty. That's how protection works. It doesn't need to fight, it shifts perspective. Those who once stood against you found themselves confused, unable to explain why their confidence vanished. It wasn't guilt, it was exposure. The energy they once controlled no longer responded. The protector had cut the signal. You no longer played defense because you became the mirror. The secret's exposure became the turning point. A moment when every manipulator met their own reflection, and it was unbearable to face. There's a psychological terror that comes from being seen fully. Those who live through deception rely on invisibility. The moment they're recognized, the performance ends. That's what happened. The protector stripped away illusion without force. It didn't destroy, it revealed. You watched people unravel, not because you attacked, but because they couldn't maintain the lie under the weight of awareness. The truth didn't humiliate them, it exposed their fragility. People fear exposure not because of punishment, but because of perception. Once others see behind the act, the power dynamic dissolves. The protector's role wasn't vengeance, it was revelation. It made sure truth didn't just surface, it stayed. The fear that followed was proof of how much deceit depends on ignorance. And once ignorance was gone, all that remained was truth. Cold, steady, unshakable. The protector didn't defend, it redefined. The protector operates in ways logic can't explain. It's the force that shows up when you've stopped begging for justice. It's what enters when you stop chasing closure and start trusting consequence. Every manipulator underestimates timing, and timing is the protector's language. It moves quietly but perfectly. Those who betrayed trust never expect the moment truth arrives. It doesn't knock, it floods. The fear that follows isn't from exposure itself, but from realizing they can't undo what's been seen. That's how protection feels. It doesn't scream vengeance. It whispers inevitability. The secret's exposure wasn't loud because truth doesn't need audience. It just needs patience. When the protector intervenes, everything that once stood against you collapses naturally. Their guilt becomes their teacher. Their silence becomes their confession. That's the kind of protection no power can compete with. The kind that doesn't just save, it educates. After exposure, peace takes on a different tone. It's not soft, it's sovereign. You carry yourself differently. The fear that once guided your decisions has turned into discernment. You no longer chase safety because you embody it. That's the aftermath of protection, clarity. Those who once manipulated your kindness now avoid your eyes. It's not that you're untouchable. It's that their deceit can't breathe near your awareness. The protector changed your frequency. You learned how to move without explaining, how to sense deception before it forms, how to trust energy more than intention. And the world adjusts to that. People act differently, speak differently, think twice before approaching. That's not fear of you. It's respect for the energy that stands behind you. The secret's exposure wasn't an ending, it was a beginning of authority. The protector didn't arrive, it awoke through you. Exposure doesn't always come through confrontation. It often happens through time. The truth doesn't rip masks off, it makes them unnecessary. Pretenses dissolve when the performance no longer earns applause. Those who lived behind facades began to notice something subtle. Their tricks no longer worked. The charm felt heavy, the excuses repetitive, the smiles forced. The audience had grown quiet because awareness doesn't entertain. Masks dissolve when someone stops reacting. The power they once drew from manipulation evaporated because the energy feeding it disappeared. What was once convincing now feels empty. You didn't expose them by attacking, you simply outgrew the illusion. That's what made it powerful. Lies decay when the truth stands still long enough. Every deceit, every projection, every false gesture, melting quietly under the heat of reality. Masks don't fall dramatically, they fade through irrelevance. And the moment the act loses meaning, the performer loses control. Once illusions lose purpose, they begin to crumble. At first, the shift is invisible. The pretender still laughs, still charms, still mimics sincerity, but awareness changes how you see everything. Their tone feels rehearsed, their words predictable. Nothing about them surprises anymore. That's how exposure works, not through discovery, but through recognition. Masks dissolve when people stop believing in them. The deceiver doesn't notice at first. They keep performing, unaware that the crowd has already left. That's when desperation begins. Every manipulation feels louder, every lie more obvious. The silence of indifference becomes unbearable. The irony is that you never needed revenge. Their act punishes itself. When falsehood meets authenticity, decay starts immediately. Masks cannot survive in the presence of truth because truth doesn't argue. It just waits. Every moment spent pretending becomes heavy, suffocating. Eventually, even the deceiver can't breathe under their own creation. That's how illusions die, quietly, without applause. The human mind can only sustain lies through validation. Once the source of validation vanishes, the mask starts slipping from within. The person wearing it begins to feel the weight of pretending. What used to impress now feels exhausting. Awareness makes deception too difficult to maintain. When someone learns to see through performance, pretense becomes impossible. Every manipulative gesture is dissected before it lands. That's why masks dissolve instead of falling. They can't survive awareness. You didn't destroy their illusion, you made it irrelevant. Their words no longer carry meaning, because the intent is visible behind them. What's terrifying for the deceiver is that they can't hide from themselves anymore. Awareness is a mirror that never shatters. Once held up long enough, it forces the pretender to see their reflection, raw and unfiltered. No accusation could wound deeper than that. Masks melt when lies become heavier than silence. There's a difference between unmasking and dissolving. Unmasking feels violent. Someone rips away the cover, leaving the truth exposed. Dissolving, though, is more elegant. It's awareness doing what confrontation never could. The pretender's identity slowly loses coherence. Their stories contradict, their motives blur, their composure fades. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens through repetition. Every inconsistency erodes credibility. People stop trusting, stop responding, stop engaging. The deceiver feels the isolation but doesn't understand it yet. That's how dissolution works. It isolates without words. The lie decays while the truth grows heavier. You don't have to lift a hand. The energy around you does it for you. The pretender doesn't even realize their collapse has begun until it's too late. By the time they sense the shift, the mask no longer fits. And when awareness fully enters the room, there's nowhere left to hide. Truth doesn't fight, it absorbs. That's why deception never stands a chance in its presence. The mask dissolves because it can't coexist with awareness. The person behind it becomes transparent, not through exposure, but through exhaustion. Pretending requires effort, and effort burns energy. Once energy runs out, authenticity reveals itself, whether beautiful or ugly. You watch this happen slowly. The same people who once seemed confident began to falter. Their eyes darted more, their words stretched thinner. You didn't need to confront, you only needed patience. The truth is patient. It waits for illusion to tire itself out. The masks dissolve not because you exposed them, but because they couldn't sustain the lie in front of clarity. That's how power changes hands. Not through domination, but through endurance. Eventually, pretense burns itself out. And what's left after the fire is always cleaner, quieter, undeniable. Masks don't survive when someone stops feeding their ego. Manipulators depend on reaction, on emotion, on constant engagement. When you withdrew your energy, their identity began to weaken. It's strange how silence dismantles deception faster than confrontation. The pretender doesn't know how to function without attention. They keep trying to provoke, to lure, to draw you back into chaos. But your detachment became their undoing. They needed your belief to validate the mask, and when it disappeared, so did their confidence. Lies require an audience, truth needs none. That's why masks dissolve. They aren't destroyed, they become useless. The person who built their self, worth around illusion, eventually faces the emptiness beneath it. That's when fear sets in. The mirror becomes their enemy, because it reflects the reality they've avoided. You didn't punish them. Awareness did. And awareness never stops once it begins unraveling what's false. The most painful collapse happens internally. No one sees it, but it changes everything. The deceiver starts losing alignment with their own act. They tell one version of a story and forget the last. They use old tricks on new people, unaware the charm has expired. The world begins to mirror their deceit back at them. Failed plans, fractured relationships, fading respect. That's not coincidence, it's consequence. The mask dissolves when life stops cooperating with delusion. You become witness, not participant. Watching from a distance, you see how truth doesn't seek revenge, it enforces balance. Every lie carries an expiration date, and awareness speeds it up. The person behind the mask feels exposed without ever being accused. Their own conscience becomes unbearable company. That's the collapse no one talks about. The moment deceit runs out of disguise and has to face itself. That's how dissolution feels. Silent, inevitable, absolute. Once the illusion breaks, the world reacts differently. People who once believed the facade start pulling away. Energy moves instinctively toward truth and recoils from deception. It's natural law. You didn't have to explain the truth. It revealed itself through contrast. The calm of awareness makes chaos visible. The deceiver's charm loses color against your composure. That's when realization hits them hardest. Not that they've been exposed, but that their old ways no longer work. It's not rejection they fear, it's irrelevance. The world doesn't revolve around illusion anymore, and the performer can't bear the quiet. When the mask dissolves, what remains is self-confrontation. For those who built identity through manipulation, it feels like death. You didn't kill anything. You just stopped pretending not to see. And when truth stands still long enough, pretense dissolves naturally, leaving only what's real. Awareness doesn't destroy people. It restores order. The mask's purpose was survival, but survival built on illusion always collapses. Once awareness enters, there's no going back. The deceiver senses this before anyone else. Every attempt to rebuild the facade feels forced. Every lie sounds hollow even to their own ears. You don't need to speak. Their reaction tells the story. The dissolution of masks isn't punishment, it's purification. The air clears, the energy resets, the noise fades. You don't carry resentment because you understand the cycle. Truth always wins, not through aggression, but through exposure. Those who rely on deceit live in borrowed time, and when time calls the debt, no defense stands. The moment self-awareness meets deception, everything fake begins to rot. It's nature's law. The unreal cannot survive recognition. Truth never enters like a storm. It arrives like a shadow at first, quiet and still, but once it settles, nothing remains untouched. The lies that once shaped perception start losing grip, not through confrontation but through correction. Truth does not mock those who lied. It teaches them through consequence. The correction doesn't scream, it whispers in ways that echo for years. People who twisted reality begin to face themselves in reflections that won't bend anymore. Their actions start to contradict their words. What once looked like confidence now resembles panic. Truth is a mirror that never flatters, and once it's placed before someone, the image it reflects cannot be denied. No argument can outlast it. That's why the awakening is brutal, because correction carries no sympathy. The false narrative collapses not with noise, but with the weight of undeniable reality. Correction doesn't care about pride. It's not about punishment, it's about balance. When truth finally moves through the room, the air changes. The people who lived in deception sense the shift first. Their rhythm falters, their control weakens. It's not that they're attacked, it's that they can no longer manipulate the environment that once hid their flaws. Truth strips away illusion layer by layer until only authenticity remains. That's its nature. It doesn't humiliate, it reveals. It doesn't destroy, it reorders. You begin to notice that reality never rushes. It waits until illusion becomes heavy enough to collapse on its own. Correction is patient but precise. And when it finally lands, there's no debate left to have. Truth doesn't argue, it absorbs falsehood until there's nothing left to feed on. That's why it's feared. Because it doesn't fight, it simply outlasts. When the truth begins its work, it doesn't shout accusations. It lets evidence speak. Words lose power when consistency disappears. The liars feel it first in their own contradictions. The stories they built begin to crumble under their own weight. That's the first stage of correction, exposure through clarity. The truth doesn't mock, because it doesn't need validation. It lets the false destroy itself. That's the quiet vengeance of reality. The ones who deceived thought they could rewrite outcomes, but truth never negotiates with pretense. Every lie carried a timestamp. Every manipulation came with an expiration date. Now the expiration has arrived. Correction begins as discomfort, grows into isolation, and ends in reflection. No one can fight it because truth doesn't play by human ego. It plays by universal law. And once it activates, even silence begins to sound like confession. What makes truth terrifying is not its sharpness, but its precision. It doesn't strike randomly. It targets exactly where the illusion was strongest. Those who spent their lives pretending are corrected through exposure to what they denied most. The manipulator who thrived on lies faces transparency. The narcissist who lived for control faces freedom they can't handle. The deceiver who built on vanity faces reflection without flattery. Truth corrects by aligning outcomes with intent. Every hidden motive, every fake smile, every false apology is rebalanced through consequence. That's the nature of correction. It mirrors action, not emotion. You start to see how fair reality really is. It never punishes, it recalibrates. Every imbalance eventually finds its counterweight. The correction doesn't feel cruel until it's deserved. That's why truth is feared by those who built empires on illusion. It gives back exactly what was invested. Correction doesn't require witnesses. Truth doesn't need to be believed to be real. While people argue, deny, or distort, truth continues working quietly beneath their noise. You see it in timing, in patterns, in energy that starts rearranging itself. People who lived dishonestly begin to lose their footing. They mistake it for bad luck, but it's correction unfolding. Truth never attacks directly, it removes what no longer aligns. Relationships fade, opportunities dissolve, lies lose oxygen. Correction feels painful only to those who resist it. To those who accept it, it feels like peace returning. You learn that silence often carries more justice than confrontation ever could, because when truth moves, it needs no defense. It already is the defense. Correction doesn't humiliate the guilty, it humbles them. It makes them face reality without disguise. No revenge required, no effort needed. The correction completes itself. Truth dismantles illusions by giving people exactly what they demanded: proof. Those who denied reality find themselves living in contradiction until they break. Correction doesn't rush, it makes people see what they created. Every manipulative tactic, every dishonest moment, every betrayal comes back, not as punishment, but as reflection. That's the power of truth. It mirrors intention perfectly. When the liar sees their own lie reflected in life, they finally understand cause and effect. You watch it unfold with no bitterness, because correction doesn't need your involvement. It's self-sustaining. The more someone tries to outrun it, the faster it catches them. Truth doesn't chase, it arrives. You stop needing closure because you realize closure is automatic. Nothing false survives in truth's gravity. The correction might look cruel, but it's the most honest justice that exists. One that doesn't mock, only aligns. Correction becomes terrifying when silence joins it. There's no yelling, no spectacle. Just the weight of truth pressing down until it becomes undeniable. That's when people start crumbling. They can't joke their way out, can't manipulate perception, can't hide behind charm. The truth doesn't care about charisma, it only recognizes integrity. The deceiver begins to unravel quietly. They say less, they show less, because pretending has become unbearable. The correction is psychological, it strips illusion from identity. Once that happens, every false layer begins to dissolve. The mask becomes too heavy to wear. You see it in their eyes. The recognition that the truth they denied has now become their only teacher. It's not punishment, it's transformation through exposure. And while others may pity them, you see the beauty in it. Correction through truth is not cruelty, it's rebirth disguised as consequence. When correction takes hold, even time moves differently. The days feel slower for those who fought the truth. Their own choices start returning in fragments. Conversations they twisted resurface in new contexts. Lies they told start echoing back through other mouths. That's how correction works. It multiplies truth until denial becomes impossible. People call it karma, but it's simpler than that. It's physics. Every falsehood creates distortion, and truth corrects distortion through repetition until alignment is restored. Isn't it fascinating how they tried to dim your light, only to find themselves blinded by your brilliance? Let's explore the delicious irony of how their attempts to silence you became the very amplifier of your voice. You see, in their desperate effort to suppress your truth, they forgot one crucial detail. Pressure doesn't always crush things. Sometimes it creates diamonds. Think back to those moments when they thought they had you cornered, their whispers spreading like poison through the corridors of your life. Every raised eyebrow, every interrupted sentence, every accidental exclusion, all carefully orchestrated to make you question your own voice. They were so convinced of their power, conducting their symphony of silence with such precision, never realizing they were actually composing the soundtrack to their own obsolescence. The beauty of their miscalculation lies in its completeness. While they were busy building walls to contain you, you were developing the strength to shatter them. Each attempt to muzzle your voice only gave you more reason to perfect it. Like a musician practicing in forced solitude, you turned their imposed silence into your rehearsal space, crafting every word until it became a weapon they couldn't deflect. What they never understood was that silence has a sound of its own, the sound of potential energy building, of pressure accumulating, of strength gathering beneath still waters. They mistook your strategic silence for submission, your calculated restraint for defeat. Oh, how they basked in their imagined victory, not realizing they were actually witnessing the calm before a storm that would reshape their entire landscape. The transformation was gradual, but absolute. With every attempt to shut you down, you developed a new way to rise up. Their tactics became your teachers, their resistance, your strength, training. While they were congratulating themselves on each small victory and silencing you, you were alchemizing their opposition into eloquence, turning their constraints into your launching pad. Now, look at them, frozen in stunned silence, as you speak truths they tried to bury. Watch how they struggle to comprehend the power of the voice they thought they had extinguished. Their speechlessness is your symphony. Their shocked silence, the sweetest validation of your metamorphosis. Every word you speak now carries the weight of every word they tried to suppress, and the impact is beautifully devastating. The greatest comedy in this performance is watching them scramble to find their own voices, now that yours has become undeniable. See how they choke on the very silence they tried to force upon you, how they drown in the quiet they thought would be your grave. Their weapons have become their wounds, their tactics, their tombstones, and their planned persecution has become their public paralysis. You've become the embodiment of their worst fear, the unsilenceable truth they tried so desperately to contain. Every attempt they made to write you out of the story only made you a more compelling protagonist. Now they sit in mute witness to your ascendance, their silence no longer a weapon, but a testament to their total defeat. The irony would be cruel if it weren't so perfectly poetic. Consider how they must feel, watching you command the very attention they tried to deny you. Their carefully constructed narratives crumble with every word you speak, their orchestrated ostracism now isolating them instead. They created this monster, sculpted this phoenix, forged this unstoppable force, and now they can only watch in mute horror as their creation surpasses their control. Let's delve into the twisted psychology of those who feed on emotional chaos, like vampires at a blood bank. Narcissists, these masterful puppeteers of human emotion, have perfected the art of psychological warfare through a simple yet devastating strategy: provoking reactions. They've learned that your emotional response is their most potent fuel, each outburst a feast for their insatiable need for validation and control. Picture them as emotional alchemists, skilled in the dark art of transforming your peace into their power. Every calculated comment, every subtle jab, every theatrical display of victimhood, these are all carefully crafted experiments designed to test your emotional boundaries. They watch with predatory fascination as their words sink into your psyche, measuring success not by the logic of their arguments, but by the intensity of your response. Your anger becomes their ambrosia, your frustration, their feast, your desperation, their delight. The true genius of their manipulation lies in its cyclical nature. Like skilled conductors, they orchestrate situations designed to push you past your breaking point, then sit back and watch the symphony of chaos unfold. Each time you react, you unwittingly validate their importance, confirm their influence, and strengthen their hold over your emotions. Your responses become the very chains they use to bind you. Each outburst, another link in their carefully crafted control. What makes their strategy so effective is its simplicity. They've learned that human emotions, when provoked, follow predictable patterns. They plant seeds of doubt, water them with subtle insults, and fertilize them with gaslighting until your emotional garden becomes a battlefield of their design. Your natural instinct to defend yourself, to seek justice, to demand recognition. These healthy human responses become weapons in their arsenal, each reaction feeding the monster they've so carefully cultivated. The real tragedy unfolds in the way they transform your strength into their sustenance. Every time you stand up for yourself in anger, every tear you shed in frustration, every moment of emotional intensity becomes proof of their power. They don't just want your attention, they crave your emotional investment, your visceral responses, your uncontrolled reactions. It's a psychological vampirism so subtle that most victims don't realize they're being drained until they're already empty. Watch how they position themselves as both the villain and the victim in this theatrical production of pain. They push you to the edge, then act surprised when you react. They create chaos, then condemn you for responding to it. Like skilled magicians, they direct all eyes to your reaction, while their manipulation remains hidden behind a curtain of calculated innocence. Your emotional response becomes their justification, your outbursts, their evidence, your pain, their pleasure. The most insidious aspect of their strategy is how it turns your natural defenses against you. Every time you try to expose their behavior, to call out their manipulation, to defend your reality, you're actually giving them exactly what they want: emotional engagement. They've learned that even negative attention feeds their narcissistic supply, that your hatred is just as nourishing as your love. Your very resistance becomes their sustenance. But here's where the game changes. When you understand that your reactions are their oxygen, you gain the power to suffocate their influence. Each time you choose not to react, you remove another log from their fire. Each moment of calculated calmness in the face of their provocations, becomes a silent victory. They may escalate their efforts, becoming more outrageous in their attempts to trigger a response, but your emotional detachment becomes their kryptonite. The beautiful irony emerges when you realize that your silence is more powerful than any scream, your calm more devastating than any storm. As you master the art of non-reaction, you watch them flounder in the face of your emotional autonomy. Their carefully crafted provocations fall flat. Their manipulation tactics lose their sting, and their power, built entirely on your reactions, begins to crumble. A broken heart can mend with time, stitched back together by new love and fresh memories. But a shattered spirit? That's an entirely different kind of wound. When narcissists wage their psychological warfare, they're not aiming for your heart. That would be too simple, too superficial for their elaborate game. No, they systematically target your soul, dismantling your sense of self, piece by precious piece, until you can't recognize your own reflection in the mirror. Like masterful demolition experts, they don't destroy everything at once. Their approach is calculated, patient, almost artistic in its cruelty. Today they might plant a seed of self-doubt. Tomorrow they'll water it with subtle criticism. And before you realize what's happening, your confidence has been replaced by a garden of uncertainties. Through love bombing turned to ice-cold indifference. Through praise twisted into poison. They orchestrate a symphony of destruction that plays out in slow motion. The healing process becomes exponentially more complex because you're not just recovering from lost love, you're rebuilding your entire identity. Every small victory feels hollow because they've convinced you that you're unworthy of success. Each step forward is haunted by their voice in your head, questioning your every decision, mocking your attempts at independence. The ghost of their influence lingers long after they're gone, like psychological radiation poisoning that continues to affect everything it touches, insidiously weaving their way through the fabric of your psyche. They don't just break trust in others, they break trust in yourself. Your intuition, they've trained you to doubt it. Your boundaries, they've taught you they're selfish. Your achievements, they've convinced you they're meaningless without their validation. The damage runs so deep that even when you intellectually understand what they've done, your spirit still flinches at shadows they cast years ago. Time becomes a paradox in this healing journey. Simultaneously, your greatest ally and your most painful reminder. While physical wounds have clear stages of healing, spiritual wounds follow no such predictable pattern. One day you might feel invincible, ready to reclaim your power, and the next you're back in that dark place where their words echo through your consciousness like malevolent mantras. The spiral of recovery isn't linear because they've corrupted your very concept of progress. Watching someone piece their spirit back together after narcissistic abuse is like witnessing a phoenix attempt resurrection while still questioning whether it deserves to fly. The process requires not just healing, but complete spiritual reconstruction. Every belief must be examined, every reaction analyzed, every instinct retrained. You're not just closing wounds, you're building an entirely new foundation of self-trust on the ashes of what they destroyed. The deepest cuts come from the way they've weaponized your own mind against you. Long after they're gone, you catch yourself using their metrics to measure your worth, their twisted logic to evaluate your choices, their distorted lens to view your world. It's as if they've installed malware in your psychological operating system, and debugging becomes a full-time job. The healing process isn't just about recovering from what they did. It's about undoing what they taught you to do to yourself. Yet in this seemingly endless journey of spiritual reconstruction, there's a dark poetry to be found. Each piece of yourself you reclaim becomes stronger than before, forged in the fire of their destruction, but tempered by your own resilience. The voice they tried to silence grows louder with each truth you reclaim, each boundary you rebuild, each moment you choose yourself over their echoing criticism. As you navigate through the labyrinth of healing, you begin to understand that while they broke your spirit, they couldn't destroy your potential for rebirth. Like a garden growing through concrete, your resilience finds ways to flourish in the most unlikely places. The very depth of the damage becomes proof of your extraordinary capacity for renewal. After all, only something truly powerful could survive such systematic destruction. The universe doesn't hand out permission slips for moving on. You have to write your own. Through the sleepless nights, through the echoing doubts, through the moments when memories play on repeat, like a broken record, you must plant your flag in the ground and declare your independence from what was. It's not about feeling ready. It's about deciding that ready or not, this is your time. The past might have written your previous chapters, but the pen is in your hands now. Every morning becomes a battlefield where you fight the same war, the war between staying stuck and stepping forward. Your disappointments will beg you to stay in bed. Your hurts will whisper sweet promises of familiar pain. Your fears will present compelling arguments for remaining exactly where you are. But this is where your decision becomes your armor. Your choice becomes your sword. You rise not because you feel like it, but because you've decided that this day will not claim another piece of your future. Watch how the simple act of deciding ripples through your existence like a stone thrown into still water. Suddenly, the questions change from, "Why did this happen to me?" to "What am I going to do about it?" The shift isn't subtle, it's seismic. Your wounds don't disappear, but they transform from anchors into fuel. Your pain doesn't vanish, but it morphs from a prison into a launching pad. This is the alchemy of decision, the magic that happens when choice meets determination. The most exquisite part of this metamorphosis is how it blindsides those who bet against your recovery. While they're still crafting their narratives about your inevitable downfall, you're quietly building your wings. Each step forward might be small, might be shaky, might be scarred, but it's yours. You're not waiting for the path to clear. You're clearing it with each deliberate step, each conscious choice, each moment you choose movement over stagnation. Notice how your decision to move forward forces others to revise their stories about you. Those who expected you to remain forever entombed in your pain now watch in confusion as you rise. Their scripts about your victimhood become obsolete as you author new chapters of resilience. This isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. About validating that inner voice that whispered enough when everything else screamed, "Give up." The beauty lies in the imperfection of your progress. Some days, moving forward looks like conquering mountains. Other days, it's simply refusing to slide backward. But here's the secret. The size of the step doesn't matter nearly as much as the direction. Your decision to move forward isn't measured in miles, but in moments. In the 1,000 tiny choices you make each day to honor your commitment to your own evolution. In this grand performance of recovery, Your decision becomes both your director and your stage. It orchestrates your actions, curates your thoughts, choreographs your responses to life's provocations. You'll stumble. That's part of the dance. You'll doubt. That's part of the story. But with each renewal of your decision to move forward, the choreography becomes more fluid, the performance more authentic, the progress more undeniable. There's a particular kind of power that comes with realizing that moving on isn't something that happens to you. It's something that happens because of you. Your decision becomes your declaration of independence, your manifesto of movement, your rebellion against the gravity of grief. It's not about waiting for the weight to lift. It's about deciding to walk even with the weight, until walking becomes running and running becomes flying. Consider how masterfully they twist the concept of love into something unrecognizable. Where love should be a sanctuary of mutual growth, they transform it into a prison of endless tolerance. Their demands come disguised as tests of devotion. If you really loved me, you'd understand why I hurt you. True love means accepting all of me, even the parts that break you. Watch how they weaponize the very language of love, turning your capacity for forgiveness into a tool for their continued abuse. The true perversion lies in how they manipulate the beautiful human desire for unconditional love into a blank check for their worst behaviors. Every time you forgive without consequences, every time you accept their excuses, every time you swallow their lies for the sake of peace, you're not feeding love. You're feeding their conviction that they're entitled to your endless tolerance. It's a psychological sleight of hand, so subtle that most victims don't realize they're being conned until they're emotionally bankrupt. Like skilled counterfeiters, they present tolerance as love's twin, but examine it closely, and you'll see the forgery. Real love has boundaries because it respects both parties. Their version demands the systematic dismantling of all protective barriers. Real love nurtures growth. Their version requires stagnation in toxicity. Real love uplifts. Their version demands you stay low enough to endure their heights of destructive behavior. The exchange rate between your authenticity and their approval becomes increasingly costly. The genius of their manipulation lies in its gradual escalation. Today's tolerance becomes tomorrow's baseline, and they'll always push for more. Like emotional inflation, what once seemed like an unreasonable demand becomes the new normal, and your capacity to endure must constantly expand to accommodate their growing sense of entitlement. They don't want your heart. They want your submission wrapped in the language of love. Pay attention to how they respond when you attempt to establish boundaries. A person seeking love will respect limits. A person seeking tolerance will rage against them. Their reaction to hearing no tells you everything about their true desires. Watch how quickly their charm evaporates when you refuse to tolerate the intolerable. How swiftly their love turns to venom when you dare to protect your own well-being. The most insidious part of their strategy is how they use your own capacity for love against you. Your ability to see the good in others becomes a trap. Your hope for their change becomes your prison. Your willingness to forgive becomes your weakness. They study your heart, not to cherish it, but to learn how many blows it can take before you finally realize that what they're offering isn't love at all. It's a life sentence of perpetual accommodation. This realization often comes with a devastating clarity. All those times you thought you were proving your love, you were actually demonstrating your willingness to be mistreated. The unconditional love they claimed to seek was merely a smokescreen for their true desire, unconditional permission to remain unchanged, unchallenged, and unaccountable. Their greatest fear isn't losing your love, it's facing the consequences of their actions. The breaking point arrives when you finally understand that their request for tolerance is actually a demand for complicity in your own diminishment. Every time they push your boundaries, they're not testing your love. They're measuring your willingness to participate in your own destruction. The moment you withdraw your unlimited tolerance is the moment they reveal their true face, proving that it was never about love at all. And now, as you stand firm in your refusal to tolerate the intolerable, they find themselves speechless, confronting a truth they never expected, that their demand for endless tolerance has met its limit.